Pepsi paid Madonna $5 million to use her new song in a global advertising campaign. Then the Vatican condemned the video. Christian groups organized worldwide boycotts. And Pepsi canceled everything, pulled the commercial from every market on Earth, and told Madonna to keep the entire $5 million fee anyway. The controversy that followed made the song #1. The 1980s didn't invent controversial music, but it invented something new, a coordinated effort by some of the most powerful people in Washington to decide which songs American teenagers should be allowed to hear. Senators' wives compiled lists. Congressional hearings were held. Record stores refused to stock albums. MTV banned videos. This is about 10 of them. Songs that sparked Senate testimony, FBI warnings, and international boycotts. Songs that were supposed to destroy careers, but instead defined a decade. What made them controversial wasn't always what you'd expect, and what happened afterward changed the music industry forever. MTV launched in August 1981 with Video Killed the Radio Star, and suddenly music needed a visual component. Some embraced it. Others stumbled into controversy without meaning to. A few saw the opportunity and pushed as hard as they could. At the same time, American politics was shifting. Ronald Reagan's presidency brought conservative values back into mainstream discourse. Parent groups were organizing, religious leaders were speaking out, and popular music, more visible than ever thanks to MTV, became a target. The Parents Music Resource Center formed in 1985 after Tipper Gore, wife of Senator Al Gore, heard something on her daughter's record that shocked her. The organization was led by wives of powerful Washington figures: Gore, Susan Baker, wife of Treasury Secretary James Baker, and others with direct access to lawmakers and national media. They compiled a list, 15 songs they considered the most objectionable in popular music. They called it the Filthy 15, and they took their campaign to the United States Senate. But the controversy started before the PMRC existed, and they continued after. What happened in the 1980s wasn't just about one organization or one set of hearings. It was about a culture trying to figure out new rules while artists tested how far they could go. Queen earned a distinction in 1982 that no other band wanted: the first music video ever banned by MTV.
Body language. Body language.
The network was barely a year old, still figuring out its identity and its standards. Then Queen submitted the video for Body Language. The video showed bodies in a locker room shower: skin, sweat, movement, very little clothing. Nothing was explicitly shown, but the implication was clear. MTV watched it and said, no. For a network trying to establish credibility with advertisers and cable providers, it was too much too soon. The song itself was just a funky track about physical attraction, nothing particularly shocking in the lyrics. But the visual representation crossed a line that MTV hadn't even fully drawn yet. Queen didn't protest. The song wasn't one of their major hits anyway, peaking at number 68 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the band set a precedent. MTV now had boundaries, even if they were still being defined. Other artists would test those boundaries throughout the decade, and some would push much harder than Queen had. Olivia Newton-John seemed like the safest artist in popular music. She'd played wholesome Sandy in Grease, though she'd transformed into leather-clad bad girl Sandy by the end. Still, her image was clean, approachable, appropriate for family audiences. Then she released Physical in September 1981. The song was full of suggestive double meanings, and some radio programmers immediately recognized what she was really singing about. Stations in conservative markets refused to play it. The video made things worse. Newton-John wore workout gear, performed aerobics, and was surrounded by muscular men at a gym. The fitness theme seemed innocent enough, until the end of the video, when two of the men held hands and walked away together. In 1981, showing a same-sex couple on MTV was shocking. Some stations cut that section. Others banned the video entirely. Religious groups complained. Parent organizations wrote letters. None of it mattered commercially. Physical spent 10 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became one of the biggest hits of the entire decade and transformed Newton-John's image completely. The controversy, if anything, helped. Black Sabbath had been frightening parents since 1970. Their dark imagery, heavy sound, and occult themes made them easy targets for anyone looking to explain teenage rebellion. By 1983, they'd heard every accusation imaginable. Trashed made the PMRC's Filthy 15 list for content about substance use and reckless behavior. The song described a car accident bassist Geezer Butler had while driving under the influence. It wasn't glorifying drunk driving. The song was describing a real event with real consequences. But the PMRC didn't make distinctions between describing something and promoting it. Any reference to intoxication, any mention of reckless behavior was treated as encouragement to young listeners. Black Sabbath didn't respond to the controversy. They'd been through worse. Being on a list compiled by senators' wives was almost routine. The song didn't hurt their legacy. If anything, it reinforced their reputation as the band parents feared most. These controversies were building towards something: MTV bans, radio edits, parent complaints. But none of this was coordinated yet. Artists were being targeted individually by different groups for different reasons. That was about to change. What came next wasn't random outrage from scattered organizations. It was organized, strategic, and it came from the center of American political power. Sheena Easton had built her career on wholesome pop. She was known for clean, radio-friendly hits that offended no one. Then Prince wrote her a song. He used the pseudonym Alexander Nevermind, but the writing was unmistakably his. Suggestive metaphors, double meanings, and content that pushed boundaries while maintaining plausible deniability. Sugar Walls was all of that. The PMRC wasn't fooled. They added it to the Filthy 15 for sexual content. The song's meaning wasn't subtle once you paid attention, and the organization argued it was inappropriate for Easton's young audience. The controversy put Easton in an awkward position. She was suddenly on a list with heavy metal bands and Prince himself. Her clean image was being threatened by a song that was, admittedly, about exactly what the PMRC said it was about. She defended it anyway. Interpretation was subjective, she argued. Listeners could hear it however they wanted. She didn't apologize, and she didn't distance herself from Prince's writing. Radio stations played it constantly despite the objections. Once it appeared on the Filthy 15, more people paid attention to the lyrics. Being labeled offensive by Washington wives made the music more appealing to young people, not less. Cyndi Lauper's She Bop was bright, catchy, colorful pop that dominated MTV and radio in 1984. It reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Most listeners enjoyed it without thinking deeply about the subject matter. The PMRC thought about it very deeply. They added She Bop to the Filthy 15 for its references to self-pleasure. Lauper wasn't subtle, just clever enough with metaphors that the song could get airplay. The video seemed innocent on the surface. Vibrant colors, playful imagery, Lauper's signature quirky style. But once you understood what the song was actually about, everything took on different meanings. When questioned, Lauper pointed out that female singers had been suggestive for decades. She mentioned Bessie Smith and other blues singers from the 1920s who'd been far more explicit. The difference was that She-Bop was a mainstream pop hit with constant radio play and MTV rotation. But by then, millions of copies had been sold, and the song was embedded in pop culture. Lauper never apologized. She believed there was nothing wrong with a woman singing about her own sexuality. The controversy didn't hurt her career. It confirmed she was willing to challenge norms while maintaining commercial success, exactly the balance that defined much of 1980s pop music. Twisted Sisters, We're Not Gonna Take It, seems like the strangest inclusion on any list of dangerous music. It's an anthem about teenage rebellion with a music video that's pure slapstick comedy. The PMRC saw it differently. They put it on the Filthy 15 for alleged violence, citing the video's depiction of a parent being physically assaulted. They argued it promoted domestic violence and disrespect for authority. Lead singer Dee Snider wasn't having it. When the PMRC organized Senate hearings in September 1985, Snider was one of 3 musicians called to testify. He showed up in his rock and roll glory: wild hair, jean vest, and a tank top. He looked exactly like the metalhead the senators expected. What they didn't expect was what came out of his mouth. He testified that he didn't smoke, drink, or use drugs despite fronting a heavy metal band. Then he systematically dismantled the PMRC's arguments. The video was obviously comedic, not instructional. No reasonable person would watch it and think they should assault their parents. He defended artistic freedom and attacked the idea that parents needed government intervention to monitor their children's music. His testimony was articulate, prepared, effective. Senators who'd expected to dismiss him as an ignorant metalhead found themselves actually listening. He turned the hearing into a platform for defending free speech on national television. The song reached number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a defining anthem of 1980s rock. Decades later, Snider said he was grateful to the PMRC. Their attack gave him a spotlight he never could have bought and turned a moderately successful song into a cultural touchstone. Madonna's inclusion on the Filthy 15 was inevitable. She'd built her entire persona around pushing sexual boundaries and challenging conservative values. Like a Virgin was added for sexual content, though it was relatively tame compared to her other work.
You're so fine, and you're mine. Make me strong.
The PMRC wasn't just targeting one song. They were targeting Madonna's entire image, her provocative performances, controversial videos, and open discussions of sexuality. Her Like a Virgin performance at the 1984 MTV Video Music Awards, writhing on stage in a wedding dress, had already sparked outrage. Conservative groups called for boycotts. Religious leaders condemned her from pulpits. Madonna's response was to double down on everything that upset them. Religious organizations organized protests. Parent groups wrote letters to MTV demanding they stop airing her videos. The controversy was exactly what Madonna wanted. She understood something the PMRC didn't. Shocking people was good business. Each attack from conservative groups gained her more fans among young people rejecting traditional values. Each condemnation made her more famous. Like a Virgin became a #1 hit and stayed on the charts for months. The Filthy 15 placement only confirmed her status as the decade's most controversial female artist. She was singing about physical attraction and using religious imagery in ways that made people uncomfortable. The PMRC gave her exactly the kind of publicity money couldn't buy, and Madonna built an empire on it. Tipper Gore bought the Purple Rain album for her 11-year-old daughter in 1984. She put it on at home one afternoon and heard the opening lines of Darling Nikki.
I looked all over, all I found was a phone number on the stairs.
The song's explicit description of a woman in a hotel lobby shocked her so completely that she immediately contacted Susan Baker, wife of Treasury Secretary James Baker. Together, they founded the Parents Music Resource Center. This wasn't a reaction to one song, but Darling Nikki was the catalyst, the track that made Tipper Gore decide something had to be done about music's influence on American youth. These weren't fringe activists or random concerned parents. They were wives of some of the most powerful men in Washington, senators, cabinet members, political insiders with direct access to lawmakers and national media. They had resources, connections, and determination. Prince had never been subtle about sexuality in his music, but Darling Nikki was more explicit than anything he'd released before. The Purple Rain album went on to sell over 25 million copies worldwide and won 2 Grammy Awards. But Tipper Gore's discovery of this one track sparked a cultural war that defined the rest of the decade. The PMRC compiled their Filthy 15 list, and Darling Nikki topped it. They took their campaign to the United States Senate. Hearings were held in September 1985. Musicians were called to testify. The music industry was forced to respond. The result was the Parental Advisory sticker, that small black and white warning label that appears on explicit albums. It exists because Tipper Gore bought Purple Rain for her daughter. Darling Nikki became known as the song that changed the music industry, not because of its content, but because of the reaction to it. One track on one album led to congressional hearings, industry-wide policy changes, and a decade-long debate about censorship and free expression. When Frankie Goes to Hollywood released Relax in November 1983, it climbed the charts slowly. By its 7th week, it had only reached number 35. Then the band performed it on Top of the Pops on January 5, 1984, and the single shot to number 6. BBC Radio 1 DJ Mike Redd was listening. He suddenly realized what the song was actually about. On January 11th, he announced on air that he refused to play it anymore. He called the artwork and content obscene. He lifted the needle mid-play and condemned it live on national radio. The BBC officially banned it 2 days later. The song's message about physical restraint during intimate moments was obvious once you paid attention. Lead singer Holly Johnson and vocalist Paul Rutherford were openly gay at a time when that was still shocking to mainstream audiences. The band's promotional campaign leaned heavily into gay culture with provocative imagery that made many people uncomfortable. The footage featured leather-clad figures and imagery that MTV banned immediately. An edited version was created, but even that was considered too provocative for daytime television. The BBC ban backfired spectacularly. Instead of killing the song, it turned it into a must-have record. By January 28, 1984, Relax hit number 1, replacing Paul McCartney's Pipes of Peace. It stayed there for 5 weeks. It spent 37 consecutive weeks in the top 40. 35 of those weeks were during the ban. When a BBC Radio 1 executive tried to explain the decision, Johnson responded that only someone with the mind of a sewer could find the song obscene. The band's record label, ZTT Records, was savvy enough to capitalize on the controversy. They produced T-shirts that said, "Frankie Say Relax." The ban was eventually lifted later in 1984. By then, the single had sold over 2 million copies in the UK alone, making it one of the best-selling singles in British chart history. The band's follow-up singles, Two Tribes and The Power of Love, also hit number 1. Frankie Goes to Hollywood became only the second act in history to achieve 3 consecutive number 1 singles with their first 3 releases. The lesson was clear. Banning something doesn't suppress it. In many cases, it amplifies it. The controversy made Relax more famous than the music itself ever could have. Madonna had been controversial throughout the 1980s, but Like a Prayer took everything to a new level. The video featured burning crosses, stigmata, a black saint that Madonna kissed, and religious imagery that combined Catholic symbolism with sexual and racial themes in ways that made institutional Christianity react with immediate fury. The Vatican issued a statement condemning the video. The Catholic Church, one of the oldest and most powerful institutions on earth, felt compelled to respond to a pop music video. Christian groups around the world organized protests. Pepsi had just signed Madonna to a sponsorship deal worth approximately $5 million. They'd filmed a commercial featuring the song and planned a major global advertising campaign. The ad aired once during The Cosby Show on March 2, 1989, reaching an estimated 250 million viewers. Then the music video came out. Religious organizations immediately pressured Pepsi to end the deal. The boycott threats were international and coordinated. Pepsi calculated the cost of the controversy versus the benefit of the sponsorship and made a decision. They canceled the deal. They pulled the commercial from every market worldwide, and they told Madonna to keep the entire $5 million fee. Pepsi effectively paid Madonna $5 million to create one of the most controversial videos of the decade. The company wanted to distance itself from the backlash, and the only way to do that was to end the relationship completely. But the contract had been signed. The money had been committed. So Madonna kept it. The controversy made the song massive. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed in the top 10 for weeks. The album, also titled Like a Prayer, became one of her best-selling records. MTV got pressure from religious organizations to ban the video, but they kept airing it because viewer demand was too high. Madonna stood by it. She said the video was about her Catholic upbringing, her relationship with faith, her experience growing up in a religious household. The imagery was personal, she argued, not blasphemous. The clash showed how a pop video could force a Fortune 500 company and the Catholic Church into a public relations crisis, while the artist's commercial performance actually improved. Madonna didn't just survive the controversy, she thrived because of it. Like a Prayer demonstrated everything the decade had been building toward. Controversy didn't destroy careers anymore. It could launch them higher than ever. The attempts at censorship, the organized boycotts, the institutional condemnation, all of it fed into a cycle where being controversial became a form of cultural currency. The PMRC got their warning labels. Religious groups got their protests. Corporations got their boycotts. And artists got exactly what they wanted: attention, sales, and a place in history. The parental advisory sticker that was supposed to warn parents away from dangerous music became a badge of honor. Teenagers sought out stickered albums specifically because they knew the content would be rebellious. The warning label became the most effective marketing tool in music history, the exact opposite of what its creators intended. Looking back, many of these songs don't seem shocking anymore. The content that horrified senators and sparked congressional hearings is now nostalgia. But the fights mattered. The debates about free speech, parental responsibility, artistic freedom, and who gets to decide what's acceptable, those questions are still relevant. The 1980s taught the music industry that attempts at censorship usually backfire. The songs they tried to ban became classics. The artists they attacked became legends. And the controversies themselves became part of music history, remembered long after anyone cared about the original complaints. The decade produced incredible music. It also produced a battle over who controlled culture, and in the end, the artists won. Not because they were more powerful than the PMRC or the Vatican or Pepsi, but because controversy sells, attention creates demand, and trying to silence something often makes it louder. These 10 songs defined the 1980s not just because they were controversial, but because they proved that controversy could be survived, leveraged, and turned into lasting cultural power. If you enjoyed this look at the most controversial music of the 1980s, let us know in the comments which song surprised you most and what stories from that decade you'd like to hear next. Thanks for watching.